All right. Welcome to another edition of Sabbath Lounge. This is Matt.
And Jake here.
And we are coming to you in a long series here called Prove It. And what number are we on, Jake?
This is episode 11.
11.
That's not the Roman numeral 2 at the top of your screen there.
Yes, it does kind of look like that.
No, this is episode 11. Prove It. This is, I think, the last one.
Last one
for our
of
Prove
this
It
time.
series.
Yeah. So that means there's 10 others floating out there in the interwebs. If you Google Sabbath Lounge Prove It, you'll probably find it. And so if you're just jumping here at the end, well, we don't care if you want to listen to these backwards. Not backwards, but like backwards order. You
No
can
secret
definitely
messages.
do that. No secret messages.
And they're backwards for you.
And if you're listening to this in audio, there's a visual part that goes with it. And we encourage you maybe to look at YouTube and you can see visuals. And we have been taking snippets of this and putting it in Instagram and TikTok, just and even YouTube short, kind of. It's a little bit shorter format. So if you've seen pieces of this, just know longer pieces exist out there.
Right.
And Jake, what do they need to do?
Like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so that you'll know whenever we put out new content.
That's right. And tell us what Prove It is about. What are you saying here?
So what we are attempting to prove is that the Torah is to be kept in this day and age. And if you look at our earlier videos, you'll see that the way we word it is that it's what we ought to be doing, because that's what the scripture says. Mm-hmm. So, and these are just our favorite New Testament verses showing that we should be keeping Torah.
And a lot of it is examples of our founding fathers. These early apostles and Yeshua himself
and George Washington keeping Torah.
I don't think so.
Oh,
not those founding fathers.
Oh,
all right.
So
here we go. Episode 11. Prove it. Lastly,
because technically this should be the last video. We'll see.
Last one for now. Our order got a little off.
Oh, that's right, because we
changed the
order. Jumped
order
ahead a little.
So James 2:8 says, "If ye fulfill the royal law according to the scripture, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, ye do well."
So here we're being called to. So think with me, if you will.
Okay, I like to think.
Okay. We're being called to fulfill the law, just like Messiah was called.
That means abolish, right?
Right. No. We are called also to fulfill the law, just as Messiah fulfilled the law, right? And if you do that well, you will be loving your neighbor as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So that's
Very
the point
good.
there.
And fulfill means to do.
To do,
just in
right.
case you didn't know.
Not to
abolish.
Not to abolish, right.
Because that sentence would make no sense.
Exactly.
Okay, James 2:14-26. What doth it profit, my brethren, though a man say he hath faith and have not works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto them, Depart in peace, ye be warmed and filled, notwithstanding ye give them not those things which they are needful to the body, what does it profit?
Doesn't do any good to just say, go be clothed.
Yeah. Good luck to you.
Right.
Hope you get a job.
Yep. Then it continues, right.
2:17 says, Even so faith, if it hath not works, is dead, being alone. Yea, a man say, though he has faith, and I have works, show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show you my faith by my works. Thou believest that there is one Elohim, thou dost well. The devils also believe that and tremble. But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead?
Man, he's just laying it on here, isn't he?
Yeah. 21, James 2:21. Was not Abraham our fathers justified by works when he had offered Isaac his son upon the altar? Seest thou how faith wrought with his works, and by his works was faith made perfect. And the scripture was fulfilled, which said, Abraham believed Elohim, and it was imputed or credited unto him for righteousness. And he was called the friend of Elohim. I don't know about you, but I'd be pretty cool to be called the friend of Elohim.
That would be nice.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. And then 24, ye see then how that by works a man is justified, and not by faith only. Likewise also was not Rahab the harlot justified by works when she had received the messengers? For she had sent them out in another way. For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. Jacob, seems like I've heard a lot of people say that I can't I can't earn my salvation. I don't have to do any work at all.
No works. Yeah, that's a common theme. And that I think just gets thrown out there because to win an argument, because I don't think I believed that in church. So it's funny that the church would be saying that to Torah folks now. I think it's, like I said, just in order to try to win an argument.
Yeah. That's a good example. So, what about if there's a preacher standing up in the pulpit and he's saying one thing, but then every weekend you see him down at the casino gambling away and going to the unsightly places and, doing all kinds of crazy, terrible things. He probably wouldn't last long in that position, and people would be like, hey, I think you're not the guy you said you were.
And he can't just say, well, I have faith, so I'm saved.
Yeah.
Because faith alone, right? That's the
good luck keeping your job and keeping your congregation giving you money and, passing the plate and live that lifestyle. It doesn't work, and many pastors have attempted, but they try to hide it. But when they get found out, they a lot of times go to jail, and things do not end well for them. Yeah. And they are not considered a holy person for a long time.
Right. And I don't think it takes a lot of expounding on this. If you're being honest with the text and what it's saying, you show your faith by your works. Yeah. It's not that your works save you. Mm-hmm. It's both of them make one thing. You need both. You need faith and you need works.
And he's kind of sarcastic here because he's almost like, Rahab. If, he doesn't say this, but it's kind of like what he's not saying. What if Rahab, the spies come to her and she's like, well, good luck to you. I hope you don't get caught.
But I believe you'll be safe.
I believe because I have faith.
Yeah.
And she just doesn't do anything. We wouldn't know her name.
Right.
She wouldn't even be written about because there may have been other people that did that. But she did something. It was her actions. And so it is a crazy scripture that people overlook this, and it's clearly that our actions show what you believe. But we believe it about everything else. We believe it about the guy that comes and knocks on your door and tries to sell you something, and he talks a good game about how when you have a problem, you just pick up that phone and you call me, and I'll come right there and I'll solve it. And they tell you all this stuff, and that guy's not going to be there. And so if for some reason you trust this guy and you sign up for whatever thing he's selling, and sure enough you try it out, there's a problem, and you can't find him. So that we judge companies this way a lot of times by what they do, and a lot of times companies are notorious for overselling themselves and under-delivering, which and that is their works. We judge them by their works.
Yep. Yeah, it's you talk the talk, but do you walk the walk?
Mm-hmm.
That's what James is saying here.
Yeah.
Brother of Messiah, actual name Yaakov, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he gets onto him here too. You say that you have faith without works, and yet the devils also believe.
Yeah, I mean he's taunting them.
It's not enough to have a mental ascension to realizing Yeshua is Messiah. That doesn't do it.
Yeah.
You have to walk it out.
It's almost like you can see James in the background going, bravo! Even the devils believe that. I mean,
That's not how I pictured it, but...
That's how I picture it. So he's, I hear this tone in him that he's just like... Yeah.
Good job. Yeah,
Great.
That doesn't impress me.
That's not going to help you.
Yeah. So he's saying that means nothing. If your actions do not line up with what you're declaring as faith, then you're not actually faithful. You have to. Your faith has to create a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's belief isn't belief if you're not living it.
Yeah. Well, and we live the rest of our lives, we live this way, We shake a man's hand and we come to an agreement or whatever. We say we're going to do something, and we have this understanding, this trust that they are going to do this thing, this work, and if they don't do it, then they're not there. We judge them and we go, well, this guy, he's all hat and no cattle. He's not a man of his word.
Right.
And we live our lives this way, but for some reason we didn't apply it to this faith piece.
Yeah, and I think because faith and belief is taught as what you think in your mind.
Right.
It's not what you think in your mind. It's what you think and do. It's Shema, right? To hear and do.
Yeah.
All right. Next.
And then 1 Timothy 1, 8 through 10. But we know that the law is good, and if a man use it lawfully, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly, for the sinners, for the unholy, the profane, the murderers, and fathers, and murderers of mothers, for manslayers.
And then he goes on to say, and as such a one were you. I believe.
As such a one were you.
And so he's saying...
Is that the next one?
No. Oh. I didn't include all that because it's... maybe I did. Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh!
For whoremongers, for them that defile themselves with mankind, for the men stealers, for liars, for perjured persons, and if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine. What's a men stealer?
I think they're women of the night. No, I don't know. It's probably like kidnapper or something. Holding someone for ransom or something. But so here's the thing. A lot of times, what we hear about in is that we'll do the things that are repeated in the New Testament. Have you heard this argument? Like, it only still counts if it was reiterated in the New Testament. Well, here, and there's another good example that we'll come to later. Here he says, the law is not made for a righteous man, but for people that do, these are lawless people. Lawless people do these and these and these and these. And we go, okay, yeah, that's all good. And we forget this part. If there's any other thing contrary to sound doctrine says keep the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Sound doctrine says keep the feast. Sound doctrine says eat clean, and all the other things, right? Sound doctrine says when you build your house, make it safe so people don't fall and hurt themselves, right? So it's ways of loving your neighbor.
Yeah.
So tell me something, Matt. So we're in our first episode, we started off saying Scripture cannot contradict Scripture.
Right.
Right? So if our understanding of the law is that it is bondage, how also is he here saying the law is good?
Yeah, it doesn't.
That sounds contradictory.
Doesn't make sense.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a fundamental flaw if you're going to call it bondage and, death to you. Here he's saying it's good if a man use it lawfully. And that's the contention throughout the whole of the New Testament, is they were not using it lawfully.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that happens a lot. People don't understand. They look at the Pharisees who Yeshua railed against for not following, for adding to Torah, and they assume that anybody that's following Torah are the Pharisees. And I'm like, no, don't assume that we're the Pharisees. That's incorrect. But I think for some reason a lot of people on the outside looking in jump straight to that we must be Pharisees.
And I think it's because when, at least this is my understanding, is when you point out that Scripture says to do certain things or not do certain things, and that being askew from that is sinful, the person hears you calling them a sinner.
Yeah.
And they don't like that.
Yeah.
And so they feel attacked. Mm-hmm. And so they say, oh, that's what the Pharisees did. They attacked people for not being lawful enough.
Yeah, and actually what they don't realize is, if we can be mature and not like kids in the matter, and it's hard sometimes to not be immature about all of this, but if we can be more grown up, we should be able to recognize that really what it is there is the Spirit of Yeshua living in them a little bit here, or it would not have convicted them.
Right.
And they can either listen to that and try to figure out the conflict that they're feeling, or they just fight it. And so I guess, and that's if you're listening to this, you're probably someplace where either you're trying to figure it out or you've already crossed over like we have, and we went through that period of time where we had to wrestle with this, and it did upset you, and it was very conflicting, and it was really hard to wrap your mind around.
And convicting.
And it did make you angry, and then sometimes you're angry because the more you dove into it, the more convicted you became.
Yeah, and you're like, I thought I was doing all right.
Yeah.
And look, this is showing me how far off I really was.
Mm-hmm. And most people just aren't willing to destroy their doctrine, if you will, to break it down. And it really makes that parable of new wineskins have a new meaning when you realize that's what we had to do. We had to take the old wineskins, we had to kind of throw them away, and we had to have new wineskins to hold the new wine.
Right.
And if you're not willing to restructure and rework that and put that new wineskin on, then the new wine is not going to stay in very well.
Right. And I think that's something that that I find interesting, and I find it maybe I don't know. I've found it important to bring up in a discussion is, look, I was where you are.
Yeah.
I've already argued against all of this stuff myself.
Mm-hmm.
So if you bring another point that I haven't considered, I will consider it. But the ones you're bringing, I've already spent months and months trying to wrestle with it.
Yeah.
So it comes across as to people, I believe, as kind of know-it-all-y or like holier than thou to them. But the point is, I'm not just jumping into this. They don't see all the time you've spent researching it before you just because it costs. You have to count the cost, and the cost is you have to change the way you're living, admit you were wrong, and about a lot of things. Yeah, at least for me. And in
a lot of ways, if you're familiar with people who have been addicted to substances, it's the same process. When somebody's been addicted to a substance, they have to change who they hang out with, the things that they play with, enjoy their free time. They have to change all those things, or they just get right back into their old ways. And in a lot of ways, this is that. You have to break free into this new thinking, and it unfortunately means you change a lot of stuff. Sometimes your lifestyle, and it puts a strain on friendships, and a lot of people just when they start finding that out, that's when some people go, well, that was neat, but I can't do that.
Right. Yeah, and that's the blown by every doctrine. That's the seed that falls on this
shallow soil that springs right up, and then the heat of the day burns it away.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, we definitely, if you're listening to this, you probably know people that have done this in different ways.
Yeah. So it's
So anyway, back to the whoremongering
right.
and the men stealers.
Right. That's the important thing. So, yes, if there be anything other that's contrary to sound doctrine, that's everything in the Torah. He uses a short little sentence there to cover everything.
Yeah.
But he's given you some examples also in case you need illustration.
And then 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17, all Scripture is given by inspiration of Elohim and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of Elohim may be perfect, thoroughly furnished into all good works.
Okay.
I've heard this scripture before, Jake.
Me too. And, I've used this scripture a lot in discussion, and I, for the life of me, Matt, cannot get an answer on it. This always gets derailed into some off-subject thing. So if you have an answer to this, put it in the comments. Okay. All Scripture. What is Scripture?
The Torah, the Word, the Bible.
To these guys, right.
Oh, they didn't have the New Testament, and let's start right there.
Right.
They didn't have Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, any of this right now.
Okay, so...
They didn't, Timothy was just a letter written to a group of people, and that's all this is right now.
Right. Sure, inspired, but still a letter to... Anyway, it was given by inspiration of Elohim. We all know that.
Yeah.
We all know, we all agree. We'll call it Old Testament, quote unquote, for commonality here. Inspired, yes. It's also profitable for doctrine. Okay. All Scripture is profitable for doctrine. All Scripture is profitable for reproof. All Scripture is profitable for correction and for instruction in righteousness. Now, listen. If all Scripture is profitable for instruction in righteousness, then when I point to the instruction to not eat certain animals, is that Scripture good for that? Is it profitable for that?
Yes. But not if you say it doesn't apply, then...
How can it be profitable if it's gone? It can't be profitable for instruction if it's gone. I mean, this question is as simple as that.
Yeah.
And to me, you could pull this verse alone out and prove we should be keeping Torah.
Yeah.
But
especially in the context of Scripture was the Torah and the prophets.
Right.
And that's what he's referring to. And he's saying that is profitable for doctrine, that particular thing.
Right. So think about this word reproof. What is reproof? I come to you and say...
To prove something.
Hey, well, what it is I come to you and say, hey, this is not the right way. This over here is the right way. Okay?
Instruction.
It's like, it's kind of like I'm...
Proving it to you again, in essence.
I'm showing you the right direction.
Yeah.
Okay? So if I'm going to call out a wrong direction that you're doing and reprove your actions through Torah, and I say, hey, Matt, this in the Torah says don't eat certain meats. You can't say, well, that doesn't work, because you're calling it unprofitable for reproving you. You're saying you can't be reproved into right think with the Torah, is what you have to be saying.
Yeah.
So, if you have an answer to that isn't contradictory, let us know.
So, Jake, why do we do this?
To be saved, Matt. We keep the Torah to be saved. Wait a minute. Don't take that don't snippet that and post it all over the interwebs. So here is a good verse that explains this to me.
All right. 2 Corinthians 13:7. Now I pray to Elohim that ye do no evil, not that we should appear approved, but that ye should do that which is honest though we be as reprobates.
Oh, so we don't do it to appear approved. We do it so we are doing what is honest. We do it so that we do no evil. Even though we're fallen, broken pots, all this stuff.
Reprobates. Yes, that seems like a bad thing.
It is. That's a very Romans 1 Paul kind of lingo there.
Mm-hmm.
Being given over to a reprobate mind.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah. So,
and it basically is similar to the scripture about our righteousness is filthy rags.
Yeah, very similar to that.
So it's the same kind of thinking.
And even though it is, we still strive for that righteous living, those righteous works.
Yeah, and that's what I heard today. I heard some people talking on something about this and talking about, that you can't earn anything, that you can't earn your salvation. But they were actually saying, this was a Christian podcast, and they were actually saying you should try to be about the things that the Father wants you to be. But they were coming from a Christian perspective. But it's just interesting how some people, they feel like they have to dance around it so much and talk a lot about, yes, it's not your actions that save you, but so they'll say it there, and then at the same time they will say, well, there should be fruits in your life that you've got fruits of the Spirit. Well, fruits of the Spirit are works, actions. Yeah. So it's just interesting that the way
it's funny how we can be saying the same thing and be meaning different things.
Yeah. And I think that in essence, a lot of people hear what we're saying sometimes and they don't realize we are saying the same thing. We're talking about the fruits of the Spirit. And you don't get these fruits of the Spirit if you're doing whatever you want. It just isn't going to get you there. The world is full of people who do whatever they want. Have you noticed that, Jake?
No.
And that's another thing.
Called sarcasm, by the way.
Another thing that gets me is, a lot of people have said things recently about, well, the Torah is written in our hearts. I'm like, well, that's going so well right now. And so, I'm just like, if you follow that argument out a little bit, it's like, so if everyone has the Torah written in their hearts,
then we're all on the same page.
Then why aren't we all on the same page? Why do we have so many denominations? Why do we have so many people fighting and arguing and then all the crazy things that people are doing? I'm like, I don't see that.
Right.
So I wish it were true, but I don't see that it's true.
Well, I think
there's not evidence. There's no works for me to see here that would prove to me that that's happening.
Right. So, yeah, because we did in a couple episodes back talking about when the new covenant comes up, what that means, that the law is written on your heart. It means that you will do it. Mm-hmm. And so, we see certain people doing it.
Yeah.
But the thing that can't be done.
Yeah, right.
We see certain people doing the thing that can't be done.
Well, and then also that's a good point because in Deuteronomy, when they're standing at Mount Gerizim and Ebal, and there's the blessing and curses, and in the section, right after he gives them all the blessing part, then he lists the curses part, and one of the things he says about the curses is when you refuse to not do it, when you refuse to not follow and not do what I've asked you to do, and it just doesn't make sense that God would make this set of rules that were impossible and then be mad at people when they couldn't fulfill them.
And then go, never mind.
It just makes him to be kind of crazy. And I think that sometimes atheists look at some of this logic and they see it and they'll bring it up. And sometimes people don't have a good answer and kind of get freaked out because they don't know. Because they realize if they're intellectually honest, there's some things they're like, yeah, I don't really understand this either. But
then it just turns into respouting the platitudes, right? It's that event where you're in a dialogue with someone and you say something they're real good at spouting the talking points, and then you say something that's contrary to the talking points that they haven't heard, and they kind of have like this freeze moment, and then they go back to talking points.
Yeah.
They don't even address what you said,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how you know, oh, there's something there that they realized that they didn't have an answer for, and
Yeah.
maybe they'll go think on that later.
Yeah.
So let's see if we have another. I think that might be it.
So yeah, we are coming to the end here of episode 11, and so if you just joined at 11, well, there's 10 more of these, Jake.
Right. So start with number 1, and that's going to give you the lead up to how we want to present this stuff and where we're coming from, so we all start on the same page. And then now that you've reached the end, we had, well, you'll have to go to episode 10 now to find how many verses we put together here, but
We have hours of listening for you right here.
right. But it was in the 70s, 80s verses.
Yeah,
And that's, each one isn't just one verse. It's several verses most of the time. But we'll just call it 70-some, 80-some verses that we think prove we should be keeping the Torah in this day and age.
And could you possibly find more? Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably could.
Yeah, these are like our top ones. So if you find, let's see your list in the comments there of the verses proving we shouldn't be keeping Torah, because I think that's a pretty slim set of verses.
Yep.
And then when you realize you're creating a whole doctrine around these 5 verses, then that should probably tell you something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So we encourage you to listen, share this with your friends, share this on social media, subscribe, like, comment. Please give a shofar. And we have to thank a very special person that listens to us, Jake. And who is that, Jake? That always gives us shofars. And I think they're related to you or something.
that would be Aunt Debbie.
Yes. So
Thank you for the shofars.
yes, and Debbie, if you've made it this far, I hope that you have, and we really appreciate it. So she's always commenting and liking and saying something. So we appreciate her, and we appreciate anybody that gives us a like and comment. So,
Right.
Anyway, and they're not shofars in there, and so she sometimes does ram horns or something. So and that works.
Rams, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's it, Jake. Anything else?
I think that concludes our extensive series.
All right.
Prove it.
Prove it. All right. Well, this is Matt
And Jake.
signing out.